I'm Danica Lorer, and this is Lit Happens, your celebration of the literary arts here in Saskatchewan. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome our guest, Regine Haensel. Regine is an award-winning writer of novels and short fiction. Her stories have appeared in magazines, anthologies, and on radio. Regine has published Book 3 in the Leather Book Tales. It's called Companion of Eagles. Regine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Danica. It's really nice to be back.
It is, and I always love it when people come back after we've sort of talked a little bit about their books, and then they come in with something new and exciting and ready to share with the world.
Yes, I'm actually very excited because my book is just out, and so it's great to be here.
Well, tell me a little bit about Companion of Eagles.
Yes, well, as you said, it's the third book in the fantasy series, and the first two books concentrated most on the young woman who was 15 and 16. This book concentrates on her brother, who's 14 at the time, and he's taking his own journey now. He was actually quite upset that he couldn't go on the last journey with his sister, so he's decided he's going off on his own journey.
Well, and it's wonderful when we see those characters grow and to begin to find their own space and take their own road in the world.
Yes, exactly.
So when we think about this, now you've got 3 books and you've finished a 4th. Now this is part of the same series as well?
Yes, the 4th is actually in the first draft stage, so it's not finished in what you would say, but it's all part of the same series, and the Leather Book Tales, which we had talked about before. Mm-hmm. The first book was Queen of Fire, the second was Child of Dragons, and the 4th one will be Daughter of Earth.
Oh, wonderful. And so this one will be another, I'm guessing by the title that it'll be another character who will be...
Yes, one of the other characters who's previously been introduced, but focuses more on her.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about who the audience is for these books.
Yes, well, I found that it's actually quite a varied audience. The books have been categorized as young adult, and the first book actually did get shortlisted as a young adult book in the High Plains Book Awards. But I found that adults will like to read them as well, and I've had good comments from them as well.
Well, and I think that so many of us adult readers love the genre that's called YA, just because the stories are so well written. They don't have to rely on swears and gratuitous scenes of sex and violence. They're just really good stories.
Yes, and also fantasy is a genre that a lot of people like as well.
Mm-hmm. So would you like to read to us from the
Sure,
book?
I'll read a short excerpt. This excerpt actually gives a hint of why I call it the Leather Book Tales series. Under a blanket, I find a worn leather-covered book. It's heavy as the sun-dried brick and much the same color. Is this the book my sister Rowan always talked about? I don't remember ever seeing it. But I was so small when Papa and I left the north. Excuse me. Maybe Mother read stories from it to both Rowan and me. Between the covers, the pages are thin, fine parchment. I worry that I might damage them, but they turn smoothly and seem strong. A faint glow comes from the book, or perhaps a stray sunbeam reflects off pale pages. The writing is curlicue and dark, not faded, as I would have expected in an old book that may have been in our family and Mother's for more years than my age. Here and there pictures in colored ink stop my breath, a black dragon rearing above a mountain path, a man with red, green, and blue ribbons swirling about his clothes, and an eagle soaring in blue sky over a mountain peak. I wish I'd known about this book when we were still in Aquila. My friend Allie would have loved to see these illustrations. I study the eagle the longest, have always been fascinated by the great eagles of Aquila, even more when I found out that Papa could speak to at least one of them. I begin to read the story called Kingdom of Eagles.
It's fantasy. Fantasy is such a wonderful place, and you're starting, what you read to us is a book, and it's what I think for many authors, that magic that happens when you open the page is what brings us in to want to share stories of our own. So what was your experience as a child? Were you somebody who was just deep into fantasy and books?
Yes, actually, I was very lucky in that I had a father who would make up stories. I would not want to go to bed at night, and so then he'd tell me a story that he'd make up on the spot. And I think that was where my love of story began. And then later on, I would go to the library with him, and he would bring back books and he would read to me.
And when you think about how you're putting together these books and going into these places where there are so many fantastical elements, are you surprised by the ideas that come to you?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes they come from other people as well. In this book, there's a new character called Grandfather Frog, who's actually a human person, but he likes to be called that. And the reason I created that character was because when I was telling my grandson about one of the characters in the previous books called Grandmother Wisdom, he said, "Oh, you should have Grandfather Frog."
Well, and it's wonderful that we can, share that sense of pride. So he'll probably, when he reads that book, he'll kind of feel that I have a part in this as well.
Yes.
And I think as writers, we often think about how solitary our existence is, but really it is so important that we have community in
Yes.
writing.
Yes.
So do you have a writer's group, or do you have people that, or do you share your stories with family before you publish them? How does that process work for you?
Yes. Well, I've been a member of the Saskatchewan Writers Guild since the 1980s, and I've been on the board and so on. So that's a very important community for me. I'm also a part of a writers group called Visible Ink, and we share our work with each other quite regularly and help each other and provide editing help. And I do have other people that I share work with periodically, depending on, just sometimes somebody shows up and I share my work with them.
And so when you're coming up with these ideas for these stories, are you going into the things that really touched you as a young person as well? You've mentioned eagles and dragons. What were some of the things that really caught your imagination?
Well, I did grow up on Grimm's fairy tales because of the German background. And so some of the archetypes of, the stepmother and the evil people and the witches and so on. But as I got older, I wanted to give a bit of a twist to that. So if some people think of dragons as evil, I actually have dragons who are useful and helpful and more complex, not just one-sided.
And so people of all ages are reading this book. Where can they find copies?
Yes, well, this book isn't yet in the bookstores. As I said, I just got copies, but I'm going to be doing a signing on the 29th of February at Indigo, and I'm in negotiations with McNally to do the same. So the books should be in those bookstores and Sask Books provincially, and they're also on Amazon online.
Excellent. And what are some of the things that when you look at what you want to achieve with this series, how many books do you think we'll see? Do you have that idea yet?
Well, 5 for sure, and other people have said, well, you could actually do a separate book about this particular character who isn't a main character. So I'm not sure what'll happen. But they may grow.
And there's still room in your imagination for the story to keep going.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Regine. That's all the time we have for today.
Thank you, Danica.
I'm Danica Lorer, and this is Lit Happens. You can find past episodes on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. And if you have an idea for a story, you can contact me at danicalore@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.